I've heard a lot of talk about the Seahawks last night. I was listening to Cowherd earlier today, and the general sense you get is that the Seahawks are in this massive need of a reboot. You know, Pete's just lost his touch, right? Pete's just lost his touch. Pete's a lot of smoke and mirrors, and it was great early on. Help me out. They lost by a field goal last night, correct? They did. They lost by a field goal? Now, I'm not saying they didn't overpay for their left tackle. I'm not saying they didn't overpay in terms of draft capital and contract for Jamal Adams. I told you at the time I didn't like those trades. But I also have the real world perspective of, hey, look, as much as you think 2 first-round picks, like there's a 50% hit rate on first-round picks, and they needed help now, and they wanted to kind of go for it last year when they felt like the Rams weren't great, the Cardinals weren't there, the Niners didn't have Jimmy Garoppolo, right? So they went for it. They made the playoffs again. But we've lost total perspective, just like we've lost perspective on the value of money. The Seahawks didn't have their best player. Russell Wilson is their offense. It does, and Dan Byer can speak to this, but the rest of us who aren't hardcore Seahawks fans, it just feels this way. Every Russell Wilson game comes down to Russell with the ball at the end of a game trying to make a play. So, yeah, they lost by 3 points. They didn't have Russell. They didn't have Russell when they lost to the Seahawks, to the Steelers either. They lost to the Titans with Russell by 3 points. Like, it's not like they're getting blown out. It's not like they're terrible. But Geno Smith has been a backup 75% of his career. The rest of his career, he'll be a backup quarterback for a reason. The whole thing is designed around Russell. They also don't have Chris Carson, their starting running back. Now, I know you could go to the other side and say the Saints don't have Taysom Hill. They don't have, their highest paid, best wide receiver. Like, all of that is fair. My sole focus is on our lack of perspective on the Seahawks, right? They get the Jaguars next week. That's a likely win. The Packers on the road, still probably without Russell. That's a loss. And as he begins to work back, there's plenty of wins still on their schedule and plenty of ball game left. And if we know anything about Pete and Russell, when they're together, when they're connected, they win more than they lose, and they're in every one of them. And if you don't think that Russell Wilson is important, here's Pete after the game last night.
I've been here a long time, and if we didn't have Russell, I probably wouldn't have been here a long time. Think of all the magic that he's created in the years. He's got numbers and stats in fourth quarter, thises and that's and all that stuff. One of the winningest quarterbacks in the history of the NFL. And it'll be really fun when he comes back and plays football again for us this year.
I see. I mean, there's no lies there. It's obvious that Pete is trying to make nice with Russell, trying to tie his ship to Russell. And he's also right. Look, we can pick apart the Seahawks and what they have and what they don't have and if they'll make the playoffs or not. I should point out that they have the Jags, they got Washington, they have the Texans, the Bears, the Lions. Okay? That even without Russell, the Jags is likely. Those are 5 likely wins. Right? 5 likely wins. And then you got Niners at home, and if they have Russell, Cardinals on the road end the season, we have no idea what they'll be like. Cardinals at home coming off of a couple of big weeks. And they'll get right back to 8-win territory, right? I know there's 17 games and it's the number of wins. I just think we've lost. We do this. We lose perspective on, the sky is falling. Like, they lost the last 2 weeks by 3 points without Russell Wilson. Like, what are we doing here? We're really going to hold against Pete the results when he doesn't have the player that his entire offense is built around and doesn't have his running back? I don't know. I'm not blind to the fact or deaf to the fact that Pete saying that about Russell is saying, look, they're we've gotten to this place in the NFL where we are in the NBA where you have to say everything possible nice about a guy because the players are so sensitive about public statements. But he's not wrong. He's not wrong. And by the way, every coach is like that in college and in pro. Right? When you have a good quarterback, when you have a great quarterback, you're a really good coach. When you don't, you're not going to be a particularly good coach. I mean, what's the difference in Bill Belichick in Cleveland and Bill Belichick in New England? Right? He inherited Drew Bledsoe, and then he had Tom Brady. Right? And I know Tom Brady wasn't Tom Brady the first couple of years, but, most NFL games are decided by a touchdown, and that's the difference between a great quarterback and an average or below average quarterback. It's that simple. And if your guy's not healthy, you got no shot. Buyer, do you think it's time for the Seahawks to turn over at quarterback, at coach?
I don't. I think that there's changes that need to be made, and it's funny because even after last night's game, I thought to myself, am I not seeing the forest through the trees? Am I too attached or too close or, nitpicking too much? And I was curious about your thoughts because I think a lot of the Seahawks fans and message boards and fan sites and blogs are saying, yeah, Pete Carroll passed him by. Like last night, you hit the touchdown to DK Metcalf and you don't go back to him again and you're punting on 4th and short. And I think that your point is one that needs to be well taken. You've always joked that every Seahawk game comes down to the last possession or Russell Wilson trying to save him, but now he's getting criticized with the last 2 weeks. He's had Geno Smith against teams that I don't know how good they are, but they're comparable maybe to the, who the Seahawks are if Russell Wilson is playing, and he's had them in those games. And I think that there's a lot of validity to what you are saying. I think that there's a hot part of the fan base that is like, we need to do analytics, we need to do this, we need an offensive mind, and blah, 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 and Pete Carroll's old and he needs to move on. But I think there's a lot of validity to what you're saying.
Well, I mean, look, what was it last year or the year before? We were doing this to Mike Tomlin. Right? We just Mike Tomlin. And then, the sound of the day, the sound of the week is Tomlin, and we'll play it for you in regards to the SC job. But, the Steelers aren't great, but you'd have to get the National Guard to get him out of Pittsburgh.
Sure.
Because they figured out that, just like looking for the next quarterback is really, really hard, looking for the next head coach is really, really hard. Right? Like, Robert Saleh, okay, was when the Jets hired him, it was like, great hire, right? Great hire. Great dude, great message, good presence, good defense when he's in with the 49ers. How's he doing? Right? Or look at Kyle Shanahan.
Sure.
You go back to the start of the season or before and you're like, Kyle Shanahan, he's the best. He knows that. Like, now they're like, well, Kyle Shanahan doesn't know what he's doing. Like, dude, it's when you don't have your starter, you're a completely different team. You just are. It all correlates. It's heck, I think Bill Belichick's the greatest coach of our lifetime. I do. But and he won 11 games the year he didn't have Brady. But remember, that was a team that won 16 the year before. Right? With Randy Moss in his prime, an incredible defense, a loaded offense, right? They won 16-11 and didn't make the playoffs, so they obviously had an easy schedule. So the point is that we have this knee jerk to us. And my thing is, I just saw a really competitive football game. I thought the game was going to be over. There was a 14-play drive? 14-play drive that ended in a field goal, right? In the second quarter. And it was the longest drive ever. And I was watching both telecasts, and Steve Levy was like, how long was that drive? It was daytime when it started. Now it's complete nighttime now, right? It was incredible, but they only gave up a field goal. And part of it is we do this dumb thing. And I know that they're giving up a lot of points per game, but we do this thing to where we're like, well, how many yards are given up? Nobody in football cares how many yards you give up. It's not a stat that they really, truly care about, right?
Yep.
Now, what's your third down percentage? Can you get off the field on third down? Red zone, right? And turnovers created. That's what they care about. That's how you know if you're – and then, points against. So, and of course, when you want to run the football to protect your defense and you don't have your star running back, or you don't have a quarterback who can also run for a first down, you don't have your quarterback, it changes the whole thing, the whole build of a team. So I think we got to have perspective in that if he didn't have the legitimacy of the last decade and the ability to figure it out, and they always seem to figure it out, like, what are we doing running a guy off when we have no idea? All right, you can fire Pete Carroll. Who are you going to hire?
Yeah, I don't understand, especially after last night's effort. I know that it kind of flies in the face of what is trendy right now. But when you have Geno Smith, or honestly, if you have Jameis Winston and you saw how maybe not potent that Saints offense was without Alvin Kamara, who's the only thing they have, you should punt them deep. If it's 4th and 1, I know it's the trendy thing to go for it, but play field position in that game, and that's what they did. To me, there are problems in Seattle. Point being, last night wasn't the reason that all those problems came to a forefront.
Right.
They were in a game with Geno Smith.
Yes, completely agree. And I thought they did a good job of pointing out there was a deep ball to Tyler Lockett, and it did hit him in the hands. But I think it was Greasy who's like. There's no one throws a better deep ball than Russell Wilson. And Geno threw it on target, but it was more of a low line drive, whereas Russell just has the ability to throw it to the exact spot with the exact right trajectory, literally right in your hands, so that Tyler Lockett, who can beat almost anybody deep, catches those balls instead of dropping it. It's the difference is that slight. And we have this thing of running off guys and not having perspective. A lot like we don't have the true perspective on the value of money and how finding a quarter is a good thing. Put it in your pocket, and every day you find change. Eventually you got that change drawer and you can make something out of it.